All right, everyone. Firstly, thank you for coming. Hell of a turnout. Really, really good turnout. So quickly to introduce myself, I'm Reese McKee. Go by CakeNotCrumbs on Instagram. I'm a social media manager and community manager at In Clothing. And I'm joined by Sam Pearce this evening, who's a creative design manager of New Balance made in UK. And he's probably the reason you're here. So without further ado, Sam, do you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've joined New Balance nearly 12 years ago, and sort of started as an associate designer and worked myself up through the ranks working on performance footwear, trail product, lifestyle, made in UK. So like a big reach of different product, which has really like influenced me in different ways and managed to get me to like where I am today. So yeah, excited to be here. Great to see a full house.
All right, we got that intro out of the way, and that went quite well, so let's crack on with the questions. For all the aspiring designers in the audience, can you talk us through the journey of getting where you are now and what your introduction to the industry was?
Well, my first career wasn't footwear design. I left school and was a cabinet maker for a UK-based yacht company on the south coast where I'm from. And that was super inspiring because it gave me an understanding of like manufacturing on the line, but also like building product with my hands. And UK manufacturing in itself was something that like I didn't realize the passion was till I started doing it. And then you learn the people you work with, you understand the trade and the skill that goes into it. And I grew up at a time when industry was moving away from the UK. Lots of things were going to Asia or into Europe for production, and you know, the car industry and things like that started slowing down in the UK. So to be a part of that and then actually carry that on through my career, you know, it's a pride thing. And you know, once you work with people that do the same job and you understand that, and you go to the factory and meet the people that do it and the pride they have, it's inspiring to be a part of. But to your question, I was doing that for 4 years, but actually felt like I wanted to do something more creative, so I went into design, and I ended up studying footwear design at De Montfort in Leicester. I don't know if any of you guys know it, but it's a 3-year course specifically in footwear design and making, so it allowed me to still do that hands-on production sort of stuff and learn that side of the industry too, and I've been able to use that in my career since. And then when I finished university, the first position I got was with Pensole out in the US. Don't know if you guys know it, but it's essentially a footwear design school based in the United States. And I was the first UK student to get the opportunity to go out there for the summer. And it was run by a guy called Dwayne Edwards, who still does it. He was creative director for Jordan at the time. And he's now turned that from a hobby into his full-time course, and it's one of the biggest courses for footwear in the US, well, the only one really specifically. So that just about rounds me up to going back to New Balance and then starting. And so I joined New Balance as soon as I got back, pretty much like 3 months later, and then got into the industry that way. And I didn't expect to be there 12 years nearly, so must like it, I guess.
Yeah, you said at first you worked on yachts. Would you say there's much crossover between the materials used on yachts and the materials used in premium New Balance sneakers?
A bit less wood, I guess, but it was all handcrafted teak stuff. So you really, and this is where it links back to the production line, you really understood the skill that goes into it and learning a product inside out, and seeing that in footwear, and then going back on the line now and seeing the factory workers make, because still a lot of it's done by hand. See those guys put those skills in day to day. You know, I can relate, and you know, it's the best part of the job, going up to that factory and seeing those guys working and building the product that you've designed.
Yeah. You say following that you went to De Montfort and studied. We see a lot of designers and people in the industry nowadays who maybe don't have the traditional background and they're breaking through, going viral a little bit on Instagram, and then they're maybe getting a collaboration with a brand. Would you say studying footwear design is imperative to getting into the industry, or do you think if you've got the passion and understand, you can go through still?
Yeah, I think actually going from that footwear design course into sneakers is kind of like it was a new thing for the university.
Okay.
Most people that go and do footwear design as a job are industrial designers, in creatives in other sense, and then the skills transfer, but especially textiles or fashion, you know, that runs in where footwear design specifically, you were more expected to go into women's fashion or the brown shoe industry,
Okay.
because it's more traditional making. I know a lot of people that run their own brands, making handmade shoes in London, and work for fashion houses in Italy that do the same job. So it's funny because once you graduate and you go into the industry, you meet. It's a small industry, and you'll get this when you get out into the working world. You'll realize how many times you cross paths with people again, and then how small the actual design world is. So yeah, a lot of those guys from De Montfort are like all over the place. I've got some mates in Nike now over in Portland, Germany. Like I said, fashion houses in Italy, Versace, stuff like that. So
Spot on. The second question is, what is your process when it comes to designing footwear? For example, do you look to comfort, function, or aesthetics first?
Well, the industry's changed a lot. As now I work mostly in lifestyle stuff, so aesthetics really important. But New Balance is kind of, it started in 1906, so most people don't realize the brand's nearly 120 years old. You know, if you look at competitor companies like Nike, they were born in the 70s, Adi in the 40s. So New Balance, with that history, they were always a company built around fit and comfort. So they started off building insoles for shoes. And so it was a comfort story. And now, you know, we've carried that on. So we still do widths. We're one of the only brands that offer widths for runners and for some lifestyle product too. I find myself now as a creative manager doing a lot more trend stuff, working on, because we were 2 years ahead. So anything coming out now that you see on shelf, I've forgotten about because it was 2 years ago. So working that far ahead of time, I'm trying to predict trends that, you know, haven't surfaced yet. I'm going to be picking your guys are going to be wearing in 2 years' time, and that's kind of an art in itself. But using New Balance's history, because it's so long, and picking what ties in there and creating that thread and that storytelling is now like a bigger part of the role than ever. So really, storytelling is the thing that is what builds all these ranges that you see, more so than maybe creating new stuff. A lot of these are retro models, so it's a balance of both when you get into it.
Yeah, like drilling down into that a little bit more. Say you are tasked with creating a 991 or a 1500, and you had a colorway in mind. Would the colorway like take precedence over the silhouette, or sometimes does the colorway just not work, and then it's back to the drawing board with the colorway?
Yeah, I do a lot of colorways. Most don't make it, but the ones that do. New Balance is made in UK. It's such a small range. It's like a capsule collection each season. So the stuff you see out here that's that made product, there's maybe, you know, a few thousand of them in existence, where, you know, a lot of the other models made in Asia, there's, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions sometimes of those models out there. So that shows how specialist and unique what we do up in our little factory in north of the Lake District.
Spot on. We've all heard of the infamous New Balance Flunby factory, but why is production in Cumbria?
So in the in the early 80s, there was a trend for what I mentioned before, production moving away from like traditionally being domestic in the US, in the UK, in Europe. It made more sense to go cheaper labor, cheaper production in Asia bases. But our owner, who's still the owner actually, he decided a different tactic was to go completely against the grain, and by having production in the US and the UK, or Europe specifically, it meant they could react quicker to markets, quicker to trends that they were seeing, quicker to feedback from runners. It also allowed us to do product that was maybe like European specific, say like Nordic runners need like snow-based running shoes and stuff like that. We could react to that quicker, where production in Asia meant, you know, larger production maybe, but, you know, you were restricted by the design ethos and how long it takes to make it and send it and get the feedback. So we would definitely work it ahead of time there. And so Cumbria had a small amount of footwear manufacturing. So we were able to, when we bought that site, use some of that skill set and then drop that production in there, retrain those guys in footwear that they already knew, because footwear is a very unique thing to make. And then that skill's carried on. And to mention about the passion of those guys, we had the 40th anniversary recently, and the guy doing the DJ set for the party had worked there for the full 40 years of production, so 1982 to 2022. He did a Northern Soul set, but he literally did he was on the cutting line for the entirety of those 40 years. And I think at one point we had three generations of the same family in there, so grandmother, mum, and daughter working in the line. So, amazing to see that, really.
Yeah, speaking on the production line and how quickly you can turn a shoe around, what would you say the quickest time you could turn a shoe from concept to finished article, sole glued on, ready to go, even if it's just a sample or for the purposes of like a meeting?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, like I said before, it takes a couple of years. We work a couple of years ahead, but from design sketch to the season, you're probably looking about 18 months. Actually, producing a shoe on the line is relatively quick once they go through and it passes through the whole range of people, from the stitches to the sole layers. But from conceptual stuff to sampling to then sorting out the marketing and get it on the shelf, yes, 18 months to 2 years.
Okay. If you could reissue one previously released colorway, collaborative or not, what would it be?
So this is pretty funny. Last week, someone reached out to me and was asking for a Soulbox Purple Devil. I don't know if you guys know, but it was like the golden age of Flimby collaboration, essentially. We did these really small runs with partners, like 100 pairs at a time. And he was asking, like, where could I find this pair? And I was like, dude, these came out 20 years ago. No one can get these. There was 97 pairs of them. And so I did a bit of digging, and I found a pair on StockX, and the current price was like $12,000. So I sent him that link, and he wasn't maybe too impressed with the price. But it's amazing to see those things still relevant. People still ask me about that kind of product, because it was kind of yesteryear when collaboration was new. People didn't think about it, and now it's so normal to us, especially you guys coming through now. That's like maybe the generation below. Collaboration's such a normal thing, but when I was a kid, it was like unheard of. The best collaboration you'd have is like a Jordan or a McEnroe, with the actual athlete, which that's not even seen as a collaboration now. That's just an expectation. I guess the other one that people ask about is the Kawasaki Ninja 993.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys know it, but it's green overlaid with black, and it's got like Ninja just stitched on the tongue and Kawasaki down the side. And it's almost famous due to myth, because it didn't really go to retail. No one really knows why it was made. It was sort of unofficial, really, but that's one. Everyone asked me about that, and it was the first tech pack I opened when I joined the company, and it was the first shoe I seen around the Flimby production line. So it's quite funny that one, the one that always comes back and people always ask me about. Do
you think the mystique of that collaboration is amplified by the fact that the 993 is traditionally made in the USA and that was presumably made in the UK?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of these styles you see, well, now it's very separated, but like we make 1500s here, but in the US we make 998s, and here we make 991s, and over there we make 990 V3s. But once upon a time, from what I said before, we put production here, so you could get the made in UK price for Europe, and then the made in USA price. You won't pay any import duties and things like that. And there was a whole run of making 993s, which was only for a few years. But now, if you go to outlets and things like that, or people will pull up a pair, you look on the inside, it's got made in UK. They're really rare. Yeah.
If you had to pick one sneaker from both made in UK and made in USA as your favorite, which ones would you pick and why?
Okay, so instead of doing one, I'm going to do a UK one and a US one. UK, I'm going with the 991 every time. It's kind of an icon in Europe in itself. Italy were way behind that. Sort of from the start, it's become the shoe that can cross over from performance to lifestyle. So when it released, it was a legitimate performance shoe. It was at a time when everything was going to like the Y2K look with the silver meshes and the synthetic overlays. And the 991 sort of was maybe the last performance shoe with that full suede upper and like a higher backsuit and like a narrow finish, and everything sort of bulked out from then onwards. So because it's that one that sits in the middle, it's a bit of VizTech with the pills in the sole. To me, it's like that perfect balance of you can dress it up in suedes and leathers and have it really premium, and you can dress it up smart. Or, like I said, it's known for its its running pedigree, and that to me is why I see it as the perfect New Balance. But everyone's got a different one. Once everyone starts going into the 990s, we can talk about it for hours and try and explain what the numbers are and what they mean and when they came out. But 991 for me. Made in US, it's actually a Japanese designed shoe. It's the 1300. It came out in 1985 at $130, which is like 2/3 more expensive than anything else on the market at the time. It was a full nubuck shoe, which also was new to the market then. Most companies were using suede, so nubuck is like a buffed leather, so most expensive version of leather you can get. And the Japanese decided to do that. New last, so it was an SL2 last, it was wider. But actually the thing that made it so famous, and the reason I love it so much, is we only ever release it once every 5 years in its anniversary in its original form. And I don't think there's another shoe in the industry. I mean, you tell me if there is, but I know Jordan used to do a thing where they'd release just the breads every anniversary year, but now they seem to release them every year. But that 1300 JP is the one that once every 5 years you can get it. When it's gone, it's gone, and you only got to wait 5 years for it to come back. And for us to have the Japanese team to have that restriction to deliberately do that and do it that special and make those little improvements each year each anniversary to try and get it perfect and improve it, it's impressive, because you could blast those out and people would be buying them all year round.
Yeah, I think the thing with New Balance is I think it's nice that some things remain sacred, because if you look at a lot of other footwear brands, they're looking just to keep the cash cow rolling in, as it were. But yeah, and I actually slept on those 1300s last time. I was offered them and I don't love the silhouette. I probably shouldn't say that here, but when I seen the retail price, I was like, I should have probably got those.
Yeah.
But what's your favourite colourway from both those silhouettes?
Well, JP's a classic. That one lives as its own. I don't know. I'm a history nerd. If you've read the interview, you'll understand that. I'll always take the original colorway. Definitely. That's just, it's sort of written into my psyche. Original of anything. They're the ones I try and collect from a archive point of view. And as a designer, the first colorway is the one you always remember. Whatever it is, that first colorway, the way it launches, that's almost like the original form. And anything after that, you can dress it up, but the original is the one that you remember.
Fair enough. And speaking on the feature, that tablet there in the middle of the marble, you can read it if you haven't already, or you can head to End Clothing Features and check it out. It's well worth reading. What sneaker innovations and methods of craft do you feel will be integral to the future of New Balance made in UK?
Well, I think the biggest miss in the industry so far that everyone's waiting for is 3D printing. The complications of making it, fitting it, the cost of it just hasn't landed, even though we can do amazing things with 3D printing in many other industries. Footwear it doesn't seem to be landing quite yet. And I remember talking about it 10 years ago, that it might be the next thing, I actually think we should take a slightly different approach and maybe think back like 50, 60 years ago, how materials were used and how product was used, and the idea of buying less, buying more special, investing in the right materials, investing in the right production, and using nature a little bit more. So I heard a quote yesterday, I think it was, that there's no waste in nature. So whatever we're talking about, say we're talking about animals, for example, they eat the nature around them, they die, then they become part of a food chain for a different animal. And the idea of that circular economy is, what we should really get back to. And the idea of taking nature as a concept, again, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, materials started to become petroleum-based, which then ruined the cycle of nature and returning back. So everything became very linear. We became a world of use, throw away, use, throw away. And I think now in the last 4 or 5 years, we've understood that we can't go on like that. And we need to think about, how to, return to that circular motion. And, there's innovations out there, the idea of, and they're not necessarily new, but like veg tan leathers, like they don't use, there's no chemicals, there's no chrome in there. So completely natural process. And then, the idea of replacing traditional foams that are petroleum-based with like mushroom-based foams that could grow in sheets, and you can pick the density and then cut out of that, and then the rest you can go put on the compost heap, and that will just break down because it's a mushroom-based material, and it'll work as a foam when you need it, or you can return it back to, the earth essentially. And that's really where I'm interested in innovation, not necessarily like VizTech on shoes or like the 3D printing. Like I said, it's never quite there. I'd like to see this sort of shift back to like understanding nature again and returning to that cycle.
Okay, so a more holistic side of innovation than 3D boots and whatnot.
That's the short answer.
Yeah, okay. Do you not think New Balance inherently are made to last, considering the materials within them? I think if you compare them to a more generic suede shoe for the most part, you can put a pair of New Balance through the washer a good few times and suede rubber on the top, they're still coming up pretty fresh in comparison. Yeah,
so I think this is another thing with Made in UK where it's special, that people probably don't understand, that we source a lot of materials from Europe, and like the Italians are known for their leather. So we're in the unique position where of all the brands we can take the leather from Italy because it's a local source to us, and put it on our footwear and sell it in that high-end sense in cost, but then you're investing in the people, the production here, you're investing in those materials, and like you said, the quality of those materials means the product lasts, and the manufacturing process, when you go up there, you've been through the factory yourself.
Yeah, I have. And it was great.
Yeah, only a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, it was for the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, and when you see that and understand, how they put that product together, you can see why it lasts, and that's the best part of my job, taking the people around the factory, and them at the start being quite intimidated by a factory and everything going on, and at the end you can look in their eyes and they've got it, and they understand about like making here and what it means to the people, and the idea of making those sort of products here when no one else does. It's inspiring to see that, like when people really get it.
Nice. Since there are plenty of students in attendance this evening, what piece of advice would you give to them about entering the world of design?
Design is a powerful tool, and I'm glad I made the step into it, because you can really change. If you like, I'm here talking about the way manufacturing should change, and domestic manufacturing should be celebrated. And when you go into the industry and you have those opportunities as a designer, you get to do the same thing. You have that USP, and you can drive those decisions because you're in charge. You're picking the materials. You're picking where things made. You're presenting ideas out there, and that's really the power of design. I think what you probably need to think about, and definitely something that come across my mind in the past, if I've been looking at different work or other industries to go into, is what you want to stand for and where your morals are, and what company you work for and what they stand for. And you'll get to a point maybe where you don't know and you have to reach out, but to have that, to design for somebody, be passionate about it, you need to have those line up with what you believe in too. And it might take time to find that, and it might take time to influence people to think differently, but I do think that's an important message, that should be put out there to young people coming into the industry. Like, you're starting from the beginning. You're the guys that are going to shape the future of this industry or fashion or whichever path you take. And you guys need to, hand on heart sort of say, like, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe in. What's the brand I work for, or am I working for myself? And stay the course with that.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks a lot for coming down.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everyone. Cheers.
That's good.